speaker is John Anderson. John has been the president and CEO of PeopleCube for the past 11 years. He's led the company through numerous acquisitions and transformation of the business to become a leading provider of cloud-based workspace management solutions. Come on, take it.
Good afternoon. My mic on? Can you hear me?
I don't think it's on.
Is that better?
Nope.
So I want to speak to you this afternoon about, following Patricia's presentation about how companies are shifting. My mic's still not up very high.
Okay. Better now?
Yeah.
Not usually accused of being quiet. So speak too loud into this, let me know. We are in the workspace management business, and we help companies implement office hoteling programs. And quite frequently, just as Patricia was pointing out, the open work environment going from a fixed model into a variable model, both internally, but now I see a shift even going to the external marketplace. So I want to talk to you about some new ideas around the transformation of that marketplace. So I think there's nothing new here in that, the top three economic drivers in an organization today are personnel. Patricia, pointed that out, the attracting and retaining of personnel. Real estate costs is typically the number two item on your balance sheet in terms of cost, a lot of money being spent there. And I'd like to introduce energy because you all are being challenged to produce business cases to do what Patricia just said there in terms of rolling out new programs and new ways to work. You learned a lot about the future of work today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the more practical applications, something that people are doing today. You can go back and implement tomorrow as you go back to your offices. So from the Global Workspace Association, they did a market analysis of the real estate lease business. If you look on the bottom right-hand side, you see the contracted space is a $60 billion marketplace today in the U.S. But as you've been listening to about the future of work, things are shifting to the upper left-hand side of this equation into more of a transactional model and both self-service and full-service models. So you see people have been working in the Starbucks, for years into a mobile workforce. They want to work where they want to work, when they want to work. But I think the key point is they want to have the choice. Just like I want to pick what I want to wear, I also want to pick where I want to work. And that's very important. So, and with the younger generation, they really want to be able to have say in that conversation and that dialogue with you as an organization. So you see the coffee houses. Obviously, the home office marketplace has grown substantially over the last 5 to 7 years. And now you see the whole emergence of the executive suites, or what I'll call the variable office market, to meet these needs. So a whole new industry has emerged to meet the needs and challenges of the mobile workforce as you see it today. If you look at history, you can see that employee space has been around 300 feet, per employee in organizations. If you look back to the recessionary times, that space requirement went up because the employment went down in companies. So actually, square footage per employee went up, and because you're in fixed leases or your own space, you can't drive that back down. Peter this morning mentioned, targeting 50. Square feet per employee. If you look at the recent Coronet and IFMA data, companies are trying to drive that down into the 165 to 185 square feet per employee. When you mix that with your fixed employees that come to the office on a frequent basis, with your mobile workforce, you can drive that down even further. So people are looking for better ratios in an operation today than they were before. So a whole new marketplace has emerged to service these things. Now, there's a lot of capital being deployed into these companies to help them grow and to service the needs of that mobile workforce. Again, they want to work where they want to work, and they want to have freedom of choice to pick where they want to work. And these are also emerging from a collaborative environment. There are much more teams going on, and so I want to be able to work with my team in a location that fits me. whether it's for video conferencing or meeting the needs of my team in a locale without having to cart around the country or get on an airplane. So, Regis, a sponsor here with us as well, is one of the largest providers of variable workspace on a global basis. And we'll talk about an example of how we can use that later. Telework has become common. Again, we're trying to attract that talent. We want to retain that talent. Going back to the economic drivers, personnel being the leading cost for most companies, to replace an employee is a staggering about 150% of their base salary to replace that employee on an annual basis. If you look at management and you look at sales personnel, that rate rises to about 250%. So attracting and retaining that talent is very costly to a company. So I want to provide an environment that they're going to be able to have choice and meet their needs as a worker, but also I want to have a productive and collaborative environment for them when they do come to the office so that they're feeling good about their workplace. So if you look at IDC studies and you look at the cost of a workspace around $10,000 per year per worker, I dare say we're not going to see $13 trillion of workspace allocated to people when you see utilization rates that are less than 50% typically when you go into an organization today. So how do we make these decisions? How do we go about redesigning our space? How do we go figure out what we need from a space? It's all about the data. You need good data to go present to business, to the C-level suite. You need good data to justify making the changes that you're going to do, to improve collaboration. But you need to understand what type of space you're using and how you're using that space in order to meet those needs as an organization. So it's all about data in order to drive that business case forward to make the changes. So we have a typical workspace. Many organizations still have that sterile environment, as Patricia noted. A one-to-one desk ratio, and people don't want to give up their offices or don't give up their desks, so it's a cultural challenge in a lot of cases to implement. And so people are trying to figure out, what is the desk ratio that I need? 2-to-1, 3-to-1. We see companies going as high as 7 and 10-to-1 in terms of their providing for their mobile workforce. You have to figure out what type of space you need and how much of that space we need. So you need to collect that data in order to be able to figure out what I'm going to do to change my work environment to meet the needs of my employees. So there's a lot of ways to collect data. IP detection. So most of us are carrying around some kind of device, an iPad, a laptop, and so I can connect into the network and I know where you're located in the building. That's one way to collect data. You can also collect data from kiosks. A lot of people are putting kiosks like you see at an airport in your lobby. You can swipe your card. I can collect that data. It's a natural motion for the employee. They don't have to do anything that they're not used to doing. I can check in from that. Smartphones, we're all carrying a smartphone. So I have GPS locators on there. Companies are working on that area to gather that data of where you are. Not only from that, they're also trying to figure out what your social interaction is. So when you come into the building, where did I go? I'm in product management. Did I actually go down and talk to the engineering department? Or did I just stay with my buddies and coworkers in the product management area? So people are trying to take that social media structure to the next level. Smartphones is a way to do that. You have occupancy and presence detection devices that are out there, sensors that can capture this data, so you can have a clear view of how the workspace is being utilized. And you also have employee badging and security badging that you can collect as you come in the door. So there's a number of ways to collect data that are at your disposal today. You got to work with your IT department. You got to work with the other people that are gathering these data sources for you to pull them in to make a business case and justify how you move forward. So once I've collected the data, I got to be able to visualize it, and there are lots of business intelligence tools out there that allow you to look at the data. Now I can look at the trend. Say that the old tried and true method of doing bed checks or time checks is just an incomplete set of data for you to go into and change your business model today. You're making decisions that are $10, $20 million decisions on leases. Basically collecting 9 seconds of data going around on a bed check a day. Trending of information. Where is the office used? The conference rooms that are being used. What size? The point about earlier today about the size of conference rooms is a big one that we find in companies all the time. Instead of having that 30-person conference room, you should have 3 10-person conference rooms to really open up that collaborative state. So you need the data, you need to understand the actual use of this space and determine how you're going to move forward. So I'll give you two examples. One is taking your fixed space internally and how do we create that flexible work environment. And then I'm going to take that to a new step forward and how do we create that into external variable space. So here's a traditional office on a floor. You have 148 people on the floor, 1-to-1 desk ratio or office ratio. In the pink or tan is the what I'll call the I space for the employee, and the light blue is the we space, or the conference rooms or the drop-in space. So in this case, there's 148 people that are allocated to a dedicated cubicle or office. And now they look at the data and they look at the utilization and they track it through sensor technology, and they discover that we're only getting 45% utilization. It's very common. I typically challenge an executive when I go into them and say, pick a floor, any floor except the executives, but they're never there, and say, what do you think the occupancy rate is today? They'll typically say 60, 70, their gut reaction, sometimes 80. It's never more than 50 on any given day. Employees are out there, sales, they're consultants, they travel. The employees are in training, employees are sick, employees are on holiday, employees are in conference rooms, not sitting at their desk every day, so they don't need a dedicated desk or cubicle. So that's I need to look at the data to figure out really what I need from an optimization and the workspace point of view. So in this case, at 45%, they said we want to implement a flex work program, an office hoteling, and now I got to create more we space. So now I'm taking the same square footage, didn't increase my footprint, because you're being challenged to either reduce your footprint and allow me to grow my business, or at worst case, keep my footprint flat. I talked to one company at Cornet last week. I got to grow 30% my headcount, but I'm not allowed to grow my square footage 1 foot. So you're challenged to be able to provide a positive working environment, a flexible working environment to meet the needs of the employees, but not increase your cost. So in this case, they were able to reconfigure, redesign, and take that same square footage, and now we're able to increase it to 260 people and create seats for them, but they're not dedicated seats. They created more we space. They talked about drop-in space for the collaboration effort. So when they do come here, they're going to feel good about the work environment they're in. And so we took a space that was 148 people, but basically we increased it to 520 people could potentially come in here based upon the ratio. But it's all about understanding that from a data point of view. I wouldn't know that I could put 520 people in here unless I had the data to be able to make that business case and understand the actual use of that space going forward. And you really need to trend it over time, over 2 or 3 months, to get a real view of what's going on in space today. So now I'm going to take that thought a step further. So you have a mobile workforce. You're creating an environment that you can work where you want, when you want to work. Employees, certainly the younger generation, I think there was a Robert Half survey done 3 or 4 years ago that surveyed the CFOs, 1,500 CFOs around the world. And the number one thing after salary that the millennial generation is looking for is, I don't want to have to come to that office every day. So we have to provide an environment where they can work outside the office and be able to work efficiently. So a lot of people don't have a good home office. Some people need to figure out, where I'm going to work when I'm not in the office. So that whole industry that's popped up allows you to work in a variable work model. Certainly Starbucks is good for making some phone calls and some email, but I need that focus time. I need a focus space. I need a cubicle, or I need a dedicated office for to work for a few hours or a day or a couple of days in a week. So here I'm taking advantage of, this is one customer looking at the northeast region of their offices. The dots are representative about occupancy percentage, so the larger the dot, the higher occupancy. Again, this is all collected from the data. And now I'm going to look at the occupancy of one particular location, Livingston, New Jersey in this time. And now I'm going to look at the occupancy that is around 38%. So now I'm going to take, superimpose a map here, and I'm going to take a subset and look at those offices that are underutilized. So in this case, we picked Livingston, New Jersey as an example, and now I'm going to superimpose the Regis locations on top of my physical location. Many companies have a lot of satellite locations that are just way underutilized. They're providing brick and mortar, but it's not being used in a proper fashion. So instead of eliminating that space or reducing that space, I could switch it all over to a variable space. So in this case in Livingston, they had 325 desks and 14 meeting rooms. It's costing them $750,000, but it's 38% utilized. Why do I keep that office open? Employees actually had closer locations going to the Regis facility than they did to the physical office. So by providing a variable